Welcome, beautiful Sigma ladies. She wasn't born cold. The world just kept turning down the temperature and expected her to stay warm. Let that sink in. Because here's a truth most people can't handle. Sigma females don't go cold because they're heartless. They go cold because they've finally stopped setting themselves on fire to keep others warm. And here's the twist. They're not broken. They're upgraded. In fact, according to recent behavioral psychology insights, high autonomy women are statistically less likely to conform emotionally in environments where emotional labor is expected but never reciprocated. Translation: she learned to protect her peace with silence, distance, and ice. But don't confuse her coldness with cruelty. No. That's like confusing a locked vault with an empty one. She's full, but you no longer have the code. And before someone in the comments says, maybe she's just bitter, relax, Sherlock. She's not bitter. She just sees through people faster than your Wi-Fi sees through walls. So today we're diving into the chilling transformation of Sigma females, not the Pinterest version, but the unfiltered, brutally honest evolution. This isn't about heartbreak. It's about emotional self-sufficiency turned into emotional fortification. Let's talk about and why that's not a tragedy. It's a warning. To everyone who thought her warmth was permanent. Buckle up. Number 1. They refuse to be the soil everyone grows in. Too many people used her like emotional soil, dumping their chaos, planting their needs, and expecting her to nurture it all like that was her purpose. They came with roots, trauma, confusion, half-built dreams, and treated her like a place to grow because she looked stable, peaceful, and rich in soul. And for a while she let them. She believed in people. She believed in second chances, in healing, in helping. She thought maybe, if she gave enough love, enough time, enough understanding, they'd finally get it together. But they didn't grow. They drained. They drained her time. They drained her energy. They drained her trust. And when they got what they wanted, some comfort, some clarity, some strength, they left. Or worse, they stayed and demanded more. And not once did they stop to ask, who waters her? That's when something inside her snapped. Not in rage, not in bitterness, but in clarity. She realized she was being used as emotional infrastructure, not as a woman, not as a partner, not as a friend, but as a function. The stable one, the deep one, the one who just gets it. No one cared how much it cost her to carry everyone else's burdens. No one thought maybe she was breaking too, just more quietly. So she stopped. She stopped being the soil. She stopped letting people root themselves in her without permission. She stopped letting broken souls use her warmth as a substitute for fixing themselves. She went cold, not because she lost her humanity, but because she finally reclaimed it. And now, she doesn't flinch when someone calls her distant. She doesn't chase after those who don't respect her energy. She doesn't play therapist, mother, savior, or muse. She's not here to hold space for people who have no intention of holding her. Call it cold-hearted if you want. But what it really is a boundary that no longer negotiates. It's the armor she built from every time someone mistook her softness for service. She's done being soil. She's steel now. And only those who come whole, not looking to plant, are allowed to stay. Number 2, she's not cold. She's on a frequency most can't hear. She's not cold. You're just not tuned in. Most people mistake her silence for absence, her stillness for distance, her calm for emptiness. But that's not detachment, it's refinement. She's operating on a level that doesn't shout, doesn't beg, doesn't perform. She doesn't need to explain her soul in public or serve up her emotions like daily specials on a menu. She's communicating, yes, but not in ways most are trained to receive. Her vibe isn't loud, it's encrypted. She feels deeply, just not in ways people expect. While others overshare and dramatize, she processes quietly, precisely, internally. She doesn't cry for attention, rage for control, or laugh just to fill silence. Her emotions don't dance for the room, they evolve in solitude. The problem is, most people are emotional tourists. They only understand signals they're familiar with. Overreaction, oversharing, over-explaining. They want fireworks. She offers a slow-burning galaxy. They want drama. She gives strategy. They want surface comfort. She gives spiritual oxygen, if you earn it. And when they can't decode her, they label her cold. But that's not on her. That's a symptom of their shallow bandwidth. See, Sigma females speak a different emotional dialect, one that requires intuition, patience, and presence to understand. She's fluent in subtext, silence, and restraint. If you don't know how to listen between the lines, you'll always assume she's distant. But the truth? She's broadcasting constantly, just not to everyone. She doesn't seek connection through noise. She seeks resonance. And if you can't meet her on that level, you're not frozen out. You're just out of range. So no, she's not cold, she's not broken, she's not unavailable. She's simply transmitting on a frequency most people were never taught how to hear. And only those with emotional fluency, not emotional hunger, will ever catch the signal. Number 3. They don't mourn relationships. They autopsy them. When something ends, she doesn't fall apart. She doesn't spiral into emotional chaos or drown in memories. She sits with it silently and breaks it down like an equation that no longer balances. While others are busy crying over what was, she's performing an internal audit, dissecting every word, every pattern, every subtle red flag she once overlooked. Sigma females don't mourn, they examine. They don't waste time romanticizing the past, they interrogate it. She doesn't ask, "Why did this happen to me?" She asks, "What did I ignore? What did I allow? Where was the blind spot?" And once she finds it, she doesn't dwell. She upgrades. She rewires her mental blueprint so that the same breach doesn't happen twice. Emotional pain doesn't shatter her, it sharpens her. She uses it like data, like intel. Every disappointment becomes a download. Every heartbreak, a systems update. There are no dramatic closure scenes, no late-night calls, no pleading, no clinging to ghosts. She doesn't grieve who you were. She studies who she was when she met you and updates that version. That's why she becomes colder after every failed connection. Not from bitterness, but from clarity, from precision, from knowing exactly what to never allow again. You won't find her venting to a dozen friends, fishing for validation. She's in her own lab, in her own mind, connecting dots most people can't even see. She's not asking for pity, she's crafting a stronger code. And by the time you realize what she was worth, she's already 10 steps ahead. Rebuilt, unreadable, untouchable. Because while others get stuck in grief loops hoping for reconciliation or revenge, she becomes the upgrade their old programming can no longer access. She doesn't mourn relationships, she autopsies them. And when the lesson's extracted, she moves on, colder, clearer, and impossible to fool twice. Number 4. She doesn't fear loneliness, she weaponizes it. She doesn't fear loneliness, she uses it. While others chase crowds, relationships, and constant interaction just to avoid sitting with themselves, the Sigma female does the opposite. She leans into the silence. She doesn't view solitude as punishment. She sees it as power. A clean space, a fortress, a sharpening room. Where others feel empty, she feels invincible. Loneliness isn't a void for her, it's a weapon. In the quiet, she reclaims her focus. She resets her standards. She trains her instincts. Every hour spent alone is another brick added to the empire she's quietly building inside her mind. And that's what terrifies people. That she doesn't need anyone to feel whole. Her emotional independence is threatening because it exposes just how dependent others really are. She doesn't entertain meaningless connections just to pass time. She doesn't fake interest, force laughter, or tolerate emotional crumbs. She's willing to go years alone rather than lower her standard for even a second. That's not cold. That's elite. What people don't understand is that Sigma females don't view connection as survival. They view it as selection. And if someone doesn't align with her vision, match her depth, or respect her peace, she cuts the cord without flinching. Not out of cruelty, but because she refuses to carry dead weight in her sacred space. She doesn't fear being alone on a Friday night. She fears being surrounded by people who drain her spirit. That's the difference. And when people call her cold, distant, antisocial, it's usually projection. Because deep down they know they wouldn't last 5 minutes in the kind of solitude she thrives in. Where they need distractions, she finds clarity. Where they beg for company, she sets up boundaries. Where they numb, she builds. So no, she's not running from loneliness. She's mastered it. And once a Sigma female weaponizes her solitude, there's no one left to control her, manipulate her, or make her question her worth. She doesn't need connection, she chooses it. And that's exactly why most don't make the cut. Number 5. Because emotional intelligence taught her to disengage, not fix. She used to step in every time. Every time someone broke down, acted out, or projected their chaos, she showed up. Not because she was naive, but because she thought love meant helping people heal. She mistook emotional chaos for depth. She believed if she could just listen enough, support enough, hold space long enough, they'd evolve. But emotional intelligence changed everything. It taught her that some people aren't confused, they're committed to dysfunction. That some aren't looking for growth, just a place to dump their wounds without accountability. She saw the pattern clearly. They didn't want to heal. They wanted to be coddled. And she became the unofficial therapist, life coach, savior, all rolled into one, draining herself to keep others from facing their own mirrors. Then it clicked. Fixing people doesn't make you loving, it makes you complicit in their avoidance. So now, she doesn't fix, she disengages. The moment she senses someone isn't interested in evolving, she steps back, quietly, instantly. She doesn't argue, doesn't beg, doesn't try to explain what they're not ready to understand. She just exits with precision, like a surgeon removing herself from toxicity before it spreads. People call her cold for that, distant, unreachable. But it's not coldness, it's clarity. She knows how much it costs to carry someone else's emotional weight while pretending it's not crushing you. She's been that girl, burned out, overinvested, under-reciprocated, never again. Now she watches more than she speaks. She studies patterns, not promises. She listens for emotional honesty, not just poetic excuses. If she sees someone repeating cycles with no desire to break them, she refuses to enroll in their loop. Because she's no longer a rehab center for the emotionally immature. She's not a place where broken egos come to rest. She's a fortress now, with entry only for those who do their own healing. She didn't go cold. She went conscious. And that level of emotional intelligence, it doesn't fix people, it filters them. Number 6. She watched empathy be used as bait and burned the hook. She used to lead with empathy, always. She listened when no one else would, stayed up late helping people untangle their chaos, and gave the benefit of the doubt even when the truth was screaming. But over time she noticed something unsettling. Her kindness was being hunted. Not appreciated, not reciprocated, just used. She saw people show up with sob stories, not because they wanted healing, but because they wanted leverage. They dangled pain like bait, wrapping their toxicity in tragedy to disarm her. And it worked, at first. She'd open her door, offer understanding, pour from her spirit, but once they got what they came for, attention, emotional labor, validation, they'd reveal who they really were, unchanged, entitled, emotionally manipulative. So she burned the hook. She stopped reacting to pain that felt performative. She stopped confusing manipulation with vulnerability. She stopped letting guilt guide her responses. Now when someone tries to guilt trip her, she gives them silence. When they test her empathy like it's a weakness, she plays deaf, and it rattles people. Because the old version of her would have rushed in to fix, to soothe, to carry. But that girl's gone. She doesn't flinch anymore. It's not that she stopped caring, she just stopped caring when it's weaponized. Now she studies intentions, not just emotions. She's learned that some people wear pain like a costume, only pulling it out when they need sympathy or access. She doesn't fall for it. She doesn't decode sad eyes or justify bad behavior with broken pasts. She knows better now. Pain doesn't excuse manipulation, and just because someone's hurting doesn't mean they deserve her energy. She meets emotional manipulation with ice. Not anger, not confrontation, just emotional unavailability so sharp it cuts off the game before it starts. They call her cold. Good. That means the hook doesn't work anymore. Empathy was once her soft spot. Now it's behind bulletproof glass. Only the genuine get in. The rest can keep fishing with bait that no longer lands. Number 7. They're cold because warmth became a currency she refused to keep printing. At some point she realized people weren't appreciating her warmth. They were entitled to it. They showed up not with gratitude but with expectations. Like her energy was on tap. Like her love was a monthly payment she owed them just for being present. The more she gave, the more they took. And worse, the less they valued it. They stopped earning her kindness and started demanding it. They treated her like an emotional service provider, not a human being. Her patience, expected. Her understanding, assumed. Her support, non-negotiable. And if she didn't deliver on time, suddenly she was cold, different, selfish. That's when something in her snapped, not in anger but in logic. She saw the game for what it was. Emotional warmth had become a currency. And she was the mint, so she shut it all down. Not because she stopped caring, but because she refused to be emotionally bankrupt for people who only showed up to make withdrawals. She's not infinite. She's not here to be everyone's mother, therapist, cheerleader, and healer rolled into one. She's not a vending machine for love, and she's done performing emotional labor for people who wouldn't lift a finger for her. Now, she's a vault, not a fireplace. Her warmth still exists, but it's no longer public access. It's private stock, locked behind layers of discernment. And if someone wants access, they better show up with respect, consistency, and reciprocity. She no longer explains herself. She doesn't defend her boundaries. She just observes who tries to guilt her back into the role of emotional provider and walks away before they even notice she's gone. They call her cold now. That's fine. Cold is better than drained. Cold is what happens when someone reclaims their worth after being emotionally overdrawn for years. She didn't run out of love. She just stopped printing it for people who treat her like an ATM. Now, if you want her warmth, you pay in loyalty, effort, and authenticity. Otherwise, the vault stays closed. Number 8. Because people only respected her boundaries once she built ice around them. She tried being kind. She tried being clear. She tried setting boundaries in the calmest, most respectful way possible. But people didn't hear her. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. Because every time she said no, it was treated like a starting point for negotiation. Every time she expressed discomfort, it was brushed off, laughed at, or labeled too sensitive. That's when she realized something brutal but necessary. Soft boundaries get tested, cold ones get respected. When she tried to be gentle, they took it as weakness. When she explained herself, they took it as an invitation to debate. But when she went silent, when she went emotionally cold, that's when they backed off. Not because they understood, but because they finally felt the consequences. So, she stopped arguing. She stopped justifying. She stopped pleading with people to honor her space. Instead, she iced them out. And like magic, the same people who used to ignore her limits suddenly started respecting her distance. Not because they grew, but because she withdrew. She became cold not out of cruelty, but out of precision. It was never about revenge. It was about preservation. If people couldn't hear her no with warmth, they'd hear it through silence, through detachment, through a door that no longer opens. She doesn't slam doors, she just locks them. Because now she knows warmth invites discussion. Coldness ends it. She no longer wastes breath explaining what should be obvious. If someone crosses a line, she doesn't send a warning, she sends absence. People say she's changed, that she's cold, unreachable, but what they really mean is, she no longer lets us walk all over her. And they're right, she doesn't. She used to hope people would respect her boundaries out of love. Now she makes sure they respect them out of consequence. And if that means being cold, so be it. Cold gets results. And for a woman like her, peace is the only temperature that matters. Number 9. Because she doesn't need to be liked to be effective. She doesn't wake up thinking, will they like me? She wakes up thinking, what needs to be done? That's the difference. While the world teaches women to be agreeable, likable, soft-spoken, and socially palatable, the Sigma female rewired that programming early. She realized that needing approval is the fastest way to stay small. She doesn't measure her worth by applause. She measures it by results. She doesn't care if people find her nice. If being nice means diluting her vision, biting her tongue, or holding back her truth. If likability becomes a leash, she cuts it, fast. And that's why people say she's cold, because she refuses to play the social dance most expect. She doesn't laugh to smooth tension. She doesn't flatter to keep peace. She doesn't soften her voice to make egos comfortable. If warmth becomes a liability to her mission, if it slows her down, distracts her, or invites emotional freeloaders, she exiles it. Not permanently, but intentionally. She can be warm, she just doesn't lead with it. She leads with focus, precision, strategy. And people who are used to charm as currency find that unsettling. They can't read her, they can't sway her, they can't flatter her into submission, because she's not performing, she's building. And in her world, being liked is optional, being effective is not. She doesn't enter a room to please, she enters to observe, to decide who aligns with her standards, not the other way around. And if someone misinterprets her neutrality as arrogance or coldness, that's fine. She'd rather be misunderstood than manipulated. Because once she stopped caring about being liked, she got dangerous, unshakable, unapologetically direct. People stopped wasting her time, and she stopped shrinking herself just to be digestible. So yes, she's cold on purpose. Not because she's heartless, but because she's focused. And if emotional warmth ever stands in the way of her vision, it's not invited, not even for a second. Number 10, she's not angry. She's in audit mode. She's not snapping, she's not yelling, she's not throwing emotional tantrums or seeking revenge. She's quiet, too quiet. And that silence? It's not passive, it's processing. She's in audit mode. What looks like emotional detachment is actually a deep strategic evaluation. While everyone thinks she's moved on or doesn't care, she's mentally flipping through files, examining every conversation, every interaction, every energy exchange. She's reviewing receipts, not emotions. This is where most people get it wrong. They think if a woman isn't reacting, she's over it. But Sigma females don't explode. They calculate. They don't rush to judgment. They run internal diagnostics. Who was consistent? Who drained her spirit and called it love? Who only showed up when they needed something? Who made deposits into her peace? And who overdrafted her soul? She's not cold. She's done collecting emotional debt from people who never had the intention to repay. And once the audit's complete, access is either renewed or revoked, quietly, permanently, and without drama. She doesn't chase closure. She closes the file and walks away like a CEO cutting off a dead investment. You won't get a warning. You won't get a big confrontation. You'll just feel the freeze. Not because she's cruel, but because she finally got the numbers right. You weren't adding, you were subtracting. And subtraction doesn't get rewarded with presence. This level of emotional intelligence, it doesn't come from bitterness. It comes from exposure, from seeing patterns, from learning who thrives on her light without ever offering shade in return. So now she audits people before she allows access. And if you're draining her, the exit is clean and cold. She's not angry. She's just done giving infinite access to people who give her decimal energy in return. And if that makes her seem distant or detached, so be it. Because when a Sigma female audits your presence and finds emotional fraud, she doesn't make noise. She just hits delete. Number 11. Because she got tired of playing the therapist in disguise. She didn't start out cold. She started out deeply present. She listened when others didn't. She heard what people weren't saying. She picked up on patterns, pain, and emotional debris most people ignored. And for a while, it felt like a gift. This ability to understand people on levels they couldn't even articulate. But slowly, that gift became a burden. Every conversation turned into a therapy session. Every relationship felt like emotional triage. People weren't coming to connect. They were coming to unload, to vent, to dump years of unresolved trauma in her lap and expect her to sort through it like it was her job. She didn't sign up to be anyone's rehab center. But that's what she became. She found herself soothing grown men through identity crises, coaching friends out of cycles they refused to leave, holding emotional space for people who never once asked how she was doing. And the worst part? They didn't even realize they were doing it. Because she made it look easy, she made them feel better, so they assumed she must be fine. But she wasn't fine. She was exhausted, because no one was checking on the strong one. No one noticed how drained she was after every deep talk. No one saw the emotional weight she carried after absorbing everyone else's baggage. And when she finally asked for space or silence, suddenly she was distant, cold, changed. That's when she knew. People weren't drawn to her for who she was. They were drawn to how she healed them, and once she stopped doing that, they disappeared. So she shut it all down. Now she doesn't play therapist in disguise. She doesn't decode people's trauma in real time. She doesn't tolerate emotional laziness or one-sided vulnerability. If someone hasn't done their inner work, they don't get access, period. Her warmth used to be open source. Now it's password protected. Call it cold if you want. But she calls it what it is: self-preservation from emotional freeloaders. She's no longer in the business of fixing what people won't even acknowledge. And if that means fewer connections, so be it. She'd rather be alone than be used as a lifeline by people who never learned how to swim. Number 12. Warmth became a liability in a world addicted to extraction. She didn't start out guarded. She walked into the world with an open heart, generous spirit, and the kind of warmth that made people feel instantly safe. And that was the problem. Too many people felt safe taking advantage of it. Her kindness wasn't seen as strength. It was seen as access. Her empathy wasn't respected. It was exploited. People came not to pour in, but to pull from her. Time, attention, energy, comfort, emotional labor, whatever they lacked, they tried to extract from her like she was some infinite resource. And because she cared, because she genuinely wanted to help, she gave. Until one day she realized something brutal. They weren't connecting, they were consuming. That's when she understood the truth. Warmth, in the wrong hands, becomes a liability. It made her a target for users, for manipulators, for those who mistake compassion for compliance. The more giving she was, the more they took. No pause, no reciprocity, no recognition of what it cost her to keep showing up with grace. It was always expected, never earned. And when she finally needed someone to show up for her, silence, distance, excuses. That was her turning point. She didn't become cold because she stopped caring. She became cold because she realized the world would bleed her dry if she let it. That coldness you see, that's resource management. That's a woman who stopped handing out her energy like samples at a grocery store. That's someone who now protects her softness like it's gold, because it is. She learned to be selective, to pause before giving, to observe before investing. Not because she's bitter, but because she finally understands her worth. She knows her time, her energy, her empathy are limited currencies, and she no longer spends them on the emotionally bankrupt. So if she seems cold now, it's because she's unavailable to be harvested. She's not the fertile ground for everyone's healing anymore. She's not the well people run to when they're thirsty for validation. She's the gate. And access? That costs more than most are willing to pay. She didn't become cold overnight. The world just kept draining her warmth without ever refilling it. Every boundary ignored, every emotion weaponized, every time she was used as a therapist, a healer, a safety net, it all added up. What you're seeing now isn't a woman without feeling. You're seeing a woman who learned that unchecked empathy invites exploitation. You're seeing the upgraded version of someone who finally stopped bleeding for people who would have let her die empty. Sigma females don't go cold because they're heartless. They go cold because they finally realized that being the emotional backbone for everyone else leaves them with nothing for themselves. And so they adapt. They recalibrate. They evolve. Their coldness isn't cruelty, it's a filter. It separates the ones who truly see them from the ones who only seek to use them. She doesn't yell. She disconnects. She doesn't beg. She audits. She doesn't explain. She exits. This version of her is quieter, sharper, more discerning, and yes, colder. But that coldness, it's what protects the rare warmth she has left. And only the rarest people, the ones who approach with respect, presence, and emotional maturity, ever get to feel it. So next time someone says she's cold-hearted, they're only proving one thing. They were never worthy of her warmth to begin with. If this message hit different, don't just scroll. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss content that speaks to the real ones. Like if you've ever had to go cold just to stay whole. Drop a comment below. What was the moment that finally made you stop being available on demand? And if you know someone who needs to hear this today, share it. You might just help them unlock their power. This isn't just a video. It's a wake-up call. And around here, we don't apologize for evolving. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. You know what to do. Let's keep building this tribe of raw, real, and untouchable.